Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Two World Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jacob, and I have with me today my other co-host, who is...
I am Barney.
And Barney and I are so excited to welcome Jen Kindbom to our program. And we wanted to talk with Jen today about an art installation that she created of a door, and also just to talk with her about doors in general. But before we go any further, I just want to give Jen a chance to say hello.
Hi, hello. Nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Jen.
Of
We've
course.
been working on finding a date that works for all of us for about a month. We kept trying to do it, and then we would run into a door, and then we couldn't get past it. So we finally found the open door to proceed. So we're so happy to do so. But it's just so interesting when you think of the concept of a door. It's such a commonplace thing in all of our lives. They're so important. They give us access to rooms to go in, to go out. They can help us feel secure when we're behind the door and we've locked it. They can open up to welcome guests as we host them in our homes. They serve many important functions. And I just wanted to start by asking Jen, when you think of doors, what are some initial images or concepts that come to mind?
Um, I feel like I've been kind of obsessed with doors for forever. Like they just kind of grab my imagination. And I think one of the big things about doors is like the potential, like what's
Mm.
in there, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, uh, I think about wandering around places like a big art museum, for example, and um you might run across this beautiful old door, and that's kind of art in itself. But what could be behind there? What's the story here?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Potential. There's so much potential in a door.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking a little bit about when you sent text to me describing the installation that you created. That was the subtitle of the what you created. It said doors and trees potential. So I feel
Mhm.
like you really are living that out, like that, embodying that theme and what you were exploring there. Barney, as you hear Jen say that, does that make any connections in your mind, the idea of potential as you think of doors?
Yeah, when I hear Jen talk about that and being fascinated with doors for much of her life, it made me think of how they're so utilitarian, and um, you know their purpose is to open and close. But um, people take, like Jen mentioned, if you're at a museum or something, or walking along the street and you see something interesting about a door, and it's curious to think about that, because it's such a simple thing that serves such a simple purpose. Why bother making it look nice, since it's just there to open and close? But people really do take a lot. Occasionally you find people or architects or whatnot, or designers, I guess, who really put a lot of thought and a lot of care into how they've crafted a door, and um, probably have some some inspiration behind that. And even when we were choosing the doors for our house, there were like more than 20 doors to choose from. And even looking at the different patterns too, I thought to myself, when I look at this, it makes me kind of feel this way, even though we're just thinking of a door that lets into like our laundry room. And I thought I really don't really want this one because it makes me feel a little negatively, but I really kind of am drawn to this one. And how neat it is to have these doors everywhere in our home, everywhere in our lives, and to be able to look at them and have them inspire us, have them evoke some kind of emotion, and have the people who are designing these doors to put that effort and inspiration into them to draw these feelings out of the people who they'll never meet and are using their doors for however many times a day in their lives. And I think that kind of also speaks to the potential of what a door can be, even way beyond its its only purpose of opening and closing.
Barney, when you were talking about choosing doors for your house, I thought about the door of our house and the front door. We didn't choose it. It's been there for a long, long time. But we did choose the color of it, and it's quite bright pink. And just thinking about the emotion that a door evokes for you, every time I see it, I think, oh, what a magnificent door. It's so pretty. And it's just a nice feeling to come home to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine having something that special, especially when it's your own, that you put that into it yourself,
Mhm.
and then being the very first thing that you see when you arrive back home. That is adds so much more meaning. I'm a little jealous of that.
Well, it's so interesting because you mentioned there, Jen, the doors of our homes and the idea of potential uh, surrounding a door. There's so many things that can happen around those doors. Um, so much of life is lived on either side of those doors. And I just wanted to share a few images from our around our home about that to kind of highlight what I mean. And then maybe we could each, if you want to add a little bit more, excuse me, to our own your own experience with doors in your home. This here that I'm about to share, hopefully it will come up for you, is outside our front door. And we have a little small porch area. And as I was looking at pictures getting ready for today, I looked at a lot of pictures of the front door and of the back door and realized that throughout the seasons, quite a few things get placed in front of that door as decorations and meant to be enjoyed by our family and those who walk by our house. And so in the fall, we put our pumpkins out in the front of the door, and it becomes that way of showing our enjoyment of the season. And then in addition to that, um, Hannah will often get her toys and play out in front of our front door. So they're right there in the backdrop. You see the door, but spread out before it, you have toy money, and you have Pokemon toys, and it's just an extra space you wouldn't always think of to play in front of the door. But for her, it's one of those natural spaces that she really enjoys. So the potential of a door can be not just its function, but it can be by a space that's used a lot for play. Um, this is our back door, and we have a patio just outside. And so we often sit on the chairs on the patio and enjoy the space looking at Katie's garden. But as you can see, again, Hannah will use that space to play. So that's another area where play happens. And we used to have a fence surrounding this back door, but we took it down, but we left one of the posts of the fence and we made it into a peace pole. And that sits outside our back door as kind of a sign of that. We value that message of peace. So the door can be also something that extends a message of something that we care about. In my basement, I have a door in my comic book room that adds to my comic book wall, and I decorated it with my big Marvel Comics posters. So the doors, at least in our home, can reflect our hobbies and interests. And then, as Jen was talking earlier about aesthetics, doors can also be an expression of the art or the beauty that we enjoy and appreciate. And this is stained glass that Katie hung by the window of our front door. So this is something that we enjoy each day as we're going in and out, particularly when the sun is shining through it. And it reminded me, as I saw that, it reminded me of my childhood when I would go to my grandmother's house. She used to love to adorn her front door windows with things. And here's a picture of some of them. She had these blue jars and vases that she loved to have on these shelves. It's just inside her front door. And I always noticed that as a child and appreciated that. And it just so happened that this is another shot of her front door, but it just so happened that her back door also had stained glass panels, and this is her back door. And this actually came from the door of her father's home from Crooksville, Ohio. After his home was sold, they ended up taking the back door and transplanting it to where my grandmother lived in West Alexander, Pennsylvania. So I always associated this beautiful stained glass with her home. And as we're talking about doors today, it's just another expression of personality and beauty that we enjoy. So I'm going to stop talking now and ask, do either of you have any other angles that you like to share about related to the doors around your homes?
One thing that I love about the doors in our home are that they are all original, with the exception of two that we added in some new spaces that we added. They're all original to the house, and they have those wonderful heavy glass doorknobs. And I remember when we first looked at this house, uh, just like loving that little detail. I remember one of our neighbors when I was a kid. Sorry, one of our neighbors when I was a kid down the street. Her house had the same doorknobs, and I remember being very little and just thinking they were the most beautiful thing. So that's one thing I love about the doors in our house. I found one time a skeleton key that seems to function in at least some of the locks. So that's
Wow,
cool too. Yeah.
that's amazing. Jen, as you were talking there, it just reminded me of the cover of one of your books. And if I
Mhm.
could just share the screen real quickly, I
Yeah.
took a picture of the book from the copy that we have here at home. But the one on the left, is that like the doorknob like you're talking about?
Yeah, that's actually that's actually the doorknob of our bathroom door.
Ah,
And and there you see the sun shining through. It would have been, let's see, it would have been in the morning, the sun shining through there. And yeah, yeah, that's
that's
the
so
one.
fascinating.
Mm.
Ah, and
Yeah.
would that skeleton key fit? Would it fit in this one too? This
Hmm.
bathroom door?
Yes, I think um okay, I haven't explored this very deeply, which I guess is a little weird. But in the doors that I tried the key, it worked.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's actually made me wonder, like, what kind of key wouldn't work in these particular locks?
Ah.
I don't know.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and actually, that second door on the second book is our garage door.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah,
can see that.
yeah, you can see the lock has been
Mm.
painted over a whole lot of times. Yeah, I just thought that was really cool.
That's so interesting. Well, when we were getting ready for today, I got these books out and was looking through them, and then it dawned on me that they both have doors on them, and it was just
Mm.
perfect that we are talking about doors today and realizing that that's been an important enough image for you that you put them on these two books of poetry that you have done. So um, it's kind of affirms what you were saying earlier that that really is seems to be a top like a image or something that interests you.
Yeah. Do you guys have any like movie doors, like doors from movies that you love?
That's a good question.
Mm.
I have a couple.
Oh, well, did you get us started while we're thinking?
Yeah, sure. So, um, you know the movie Labyrinth? Um,
Yes.
okay. So there is this one scene, after Sarah has fallen into the oubliette, and it's this dark, scary, horrible place. And Hoggle is trying to lead her out of the oubliette without being caught by the Goblin King.
Mm.
And this one part, he opens up a little door, like a hidden door, and all of this stuff falls out, like pots and pans and things and stuff. It's just a closet. And he's like, "Oh, hold on one second." And he closes it and then opens it from the other side, like the other side of the door. And here's this whole big space, this stairway out. And so that was a very early door influence, I guess. Um, and also uh it, favorite movie time, I guess. At the very beginning of the movie, the Disney version from the 50s, Alice in Wonder, I think it's from the 50s, Alice in Wonderland. Um, she's fallen through the hole, she's after the white rabbit, and she finds herself in this space, like this weird, huge space. And it's this series of doors, and one opens from the left and one opens from the right, and they get smaller and smaller, and it's just so cool. Just
Oh,
thinking about finding these doors. I don't know about you guys, but that was like something that I thought about a lot when I was little. Like maybe there's a hidden door in my house that I don't know about yet. Yeah,
oh yeah.
doors. Yeah.
Well, as you mentioned Alice in Wonderland there, it reminds me of another movie that references Alice in Wonderland, The Matrix. In the second Matrix movie, there's this really big plot point about doors. They're looking for this key maker that will
Mm.
help Neo essentially get to the architect who's at the core of the Matrix that all of these humans are like stuck in. And so I remember in the movie, it's so brilliant how they do the scene where Neo actually walks through the door to meet the architect, and the way that light outlines the door. And as he
Mm.
steps through, they really highlight the contrast when he steps out of the matrix into this unique space. And that's one time where a door really stood out. But I know that the Matrix on several occasions references Alice in Wonderland, particularly in the first film. Like, what is it? Neo following the rabbit down the hole. You know, this idea of him going deeper into this mystery of what is the Matrix. And yeah, how about for you, Barney?
Yeah, even at the very beginning of the episode today, I thought right away of the end of the old TV show Get Smart,
Yes.
where he is going through all of those doors, and then of course
Oh
at
my
the end
God.
pinches his nose in the very last one. And and as far as movies go, I remember always being impressed and touched by the door into, like, I guess the house or the compound or the area, the living area in Ben Hur, the Charlton Heston version, and how deliberate we see Charlton Heston, Ben Hur's character always touch. Is it the mezuzah that he touches that has the a bit of the Torah inside? It very reverently touches it before he goes into the home. And I remember asking my mom what that was, and she explained it to me. And I thought that was so neat to add that tiny little detail to this movie, and that always stuck with me. And I always wished that we could have something like that here at my house. But I think I was probably the only one who wished that we had that, so it never materialized.
Since you're talking about your home, Barney, are there any other
Mhm.
thoughts you have related to that idea of doors around your home?
Yeah, I think that especially hearing your stories and seeing your photos made me realize how very, very different they are here. And I think that's because we have every house has an entryway, an area where you must take your shoes off, and it's treated um, very utilitarianly, I believe, because it's not really that part is like the prologue to the house. It's not the real house yet, because how nice can you make that look? Because right in front of you is another door into the actual house. And so I think that, like, the front door, especially of homes here, are very, very common, very standard. The only difference is that old houses usually would slide open, and newer houses are treated, function more as typical standard doors that we see, but nothing interesting, to be honest, especially when I see your photos. And in fact, I think people tend to have designed into their homes ways of blocking sight to the front door, um, kind of as a way to emphasize privacy and having your own space in an area where there's a lot of other people nearby. I mean, even ourselves at our door, we have a few like spaced vertical bars that work to really kind of shield people seeing us go in and out. And then I think about my house in particular, and as you can see from my background, there's lots and lots and lots of white. Um, and what makes our house unique, though, is the lack of doors, in a way, because a lot of Japanese houses have hallways everywhere. And and it occurred to me that it's not as welcoming, because then you have a house that has doors to everything: a door into the main room, a door into the side room, a door into the kitchen, a door into the bathroom, a door into the laundry room. Um, and I thought, uh, my initial thought, of course, was I want this to be very welcoming and to have a welcome, warm, homey feel. And so I said, let's get rid of that hallway. I don't want that hallway here. And then I also realized, other people point out, well, it also gives you a lot more space that you're not wasting on all these doors. But primarily, I thought I want people to have this warm welcome, to our home kind of feel. And so we intentionally asked them to take out all of those doors. And so, I think, as Jacob probably remembers, there's no door to the kitchen. There's no door to this. There's no door to the stairway. There's lots of openness for people to come in and be in the space with us and together, and to feel welcome right away.
Barney, as you were talking about taking doors out, I thought about a time when we added a door. Sometimes when you live in a very old house, you you come across things like a spare door just hanging out in the garage. And that is what happened. Kyle found this old door that obviously had been somewhere in our house at some point. Um, and this was when our kids were very, very little. I'm not sure that our daughter was here yet. And we also had pets. We have pets. And so we decided, I think we discovered a couple of things. That the place that we wanted to put the store was not where it was originally. I think it was originally one of those that swings between the kitchen and the dining room. But what we wanted to do is put a door the at the top of the stairs to the basement. Just, so nobody falls down the stairs. So we can contain the dog if we have to like move something from outside into the basement or something like that. And we didn't anticipate this when we started the project, but Kyle ended up needing to cut like 2 inches off the width of the door and like do some finagling to make it work in that doorway, which was a little bit smaller than its original doorway. And kind of cool was that he used that chunk of door to make a little shoe shelf for that area. And the shoe shelf is still there. We did take the door down since our kids are older, and the need to contain our animals is a little less pressing. So yeah.
That's so interesting. So part of the door remains in the shoe shelf, but the rest is
Yeah.
down for now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, now that we've talked a little bit about some doors that we noticed in movies and some doors around our homes, could we talk about other doors that are memorable to us, or that stand out as maybe our favorite doors or doors that left an impression on us? And maybe while you're thinking, if it's okay, I'd like to just share a couple images. For me, two doors that really stand out specifically are doors of the schools that I had gone to when I was growing up. And so I'm just going to try to bring up a photo here. If I can. One second. The first one is the door of the school that I went to for when I was in elementary. And this is in West Alexander. This building is no longer used as a school. It's now a community building. So I shouldn't say that. It's no longer used as an elementary school. There is a preschool in the building, which is so fascinating. I visited this building when I was on my sabbatical in 2019 with my children, and it was an amazing experience because I hadn't been there in like over 25 or 30 years, something like that. And to go there with my kids, and it was like a time capsule. It was very much the same as I remembered it. And so as I go through the door here, on the inside,
Mm.
and the left there on that pin board, you can see there is actually a little school building kind of in clip art. And that's for the preschool. And the teacher has some images there, and there's some announcements related to the school. And it just reminded me when I stepped in the door of what it was like when I was a child going in that school, because they would use the pin boards in the same way and have announcements for
Mm.
things. And so my kids were able to go up the stairs with me and look in some of the classrooms. We went into the gymnasium and looked around. It just was so much as it had been, and it's just so similar. And so that is a very memorable door to me and a space to me. And going in just brought back so many memories. And in a similar way, the doors to the high school that I had gone to, Wheeling Central Catholic High School, I drove by that same trip with my kids just to show them the outside of the school. We didn't end up going in, but the hundreds of times when you're in high school, you enter the building and you don't even think about you know the doors per se. But then later, when you drive by and you think, oh, I remember going through those so many times, it just brought me back to such an exciting time in life, and a really formational time. And when you're emerging into adulthood and going through those doors day after day, not thinking about it per se, but you grow and you change a lot in the time spent in that building before going out. So those are a set of doors that really jump out to me. But now I want to ask you, Jen, or you, Barney, are there any doors that you'd like to share about with that type of concept?
I was thinking about this last night, and um, uh, this is still a door related to a house, but I don't live there now.
That's
Um,
okay. That sounds good. Please
okay,
share.
okay. So, doors at the house that I grew up in Cleveland, were a little unusual, I think. So, our house um had a front porch that was like screened in, and it had like a like a, s- a storm door there. And the lock on that part was just one of those little like hooks that you hook into, like there's a hook on the door and a little what is that called? Like an eye on the other, on the frame of the
Mm-hmm.
door, and you just like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um and then there was this beautiful door with um like 12 or 15 windows, just like little windows, and we always had like a sheer curtain over it. But here's the thing, if you were coming to our house or if we were coming home, we never ever 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 came through that way. We would always walk around to the back of the house, and here this is I still don't entirely understand what's going on here, but we would our main entrance was up a few stairs onto the back porch. Um but then, like, right to the side of that, if you walked around the back porch, there was another door just at ground level, like right next to it. So there's a door like here and a door like here. Um and we I think in the 18 years that I lived in that house, I believe we opened that bottom door like maybe a dozen times. We just like never ever
Wow.
used it. We always would just go to the back door on the porch. And that was the one. And a really sweet memory I have with associated with that first door that was there, um is related to the animals we lived with. So our our first dog, my first dog, my parents acquired before I was born, if she wanted to come in from outside, she would come up to the back porch and scratch at the door, like knock on the door, which
Mm.
was really funny. And the cat that we had would climb the door. I think that's not unusual. But the door, like, it had this like kind of filigree thing, like this metal swirly gate thing. It's not a gate. It's like a grate. Yes, like a metal swirly grate. And so the cat would climb up and peer in the window. You could only see it if you had like scaled the door to peer in the window. Um, and so just like the sounds and the comedy of of our beloved animals. It's a nice memory that I have of our weird door situation.
That's so interesting when you were mentioning just a little bit earlier the door that you hardly ever used.
Mm.
It reminded me of in Rome at the Vatican. There's this door called the Jubilee door that is only opened once every so many decades, and it's I think it's open when the whoever's the pope at the time designates a certain time of jubilee for pilgrims. It's at this papal basilica, but it's otherwise, other than these special occasions for the marking a jubilee year, it remains closed. And maybe it's opened a little bit less frequently than the ones at your house when you're growing up, but there are some doors that are hardly ever used, and it's
Mhm.
fascinating. At the front of our church,
Mm.
the door there used to be the main entrance to the building, but then years ago when the sanctuary was kind of reoriented, the pews were shifted, they made a stairway that goes right behind where the door is. So for all intents and purposes, that door remains permanently sealed because there's literally like a stairway right behind it. So some doors are like hardly ever used or never used, and that kind of reminded me of that when you were sharing in your story about your door at home that was hardly used. But
Yeah.
um,
It's so sorry. Can I throw one more thing in here?
yeah,
It's so interesting because when those doors are used, like when that door in Rome is used, or when our lower door would be opened, like it just it makes you look at that space differently.
Mm.
Like the light comes in differently than it normally does.
mm,
It's just
wow,
it's just really cool.
that is really cool. Wow. How about for you, Barney? As you heard Jen sharing just now, was there anything that jumped out to you?
Um, yeah, I was thinking about a few photos to share of doors as well, and then I realized that I think I have maybe a photo that exactly matches the description of the door you were talking about that your cat would climb. Um, so here exactly it has kind of the iron working outside of the door that would open up first, and then there's the door behind it. And I think that I think this is from Macau maybe, and I think I took this photo because of the colorfulness of the house more than anything, but also the door itself was interesting. And I'll get to kind of the main feature in this set of photos, but before that, I was so impressed by this door. This is from an old hotel in Ho Chi Minh City, and I loved the rich color of the door of the wood, and how dark it is, and actually the area itself is a little bit dark, so the photo doesn't show up so well. But um, this door actually leads into the area where the bathrooms are, and I thought, wow, to decorate this space with this large photo that's really well lit, a large painting, and a nice touch of color with the flowers on this antique um, um, uh, like stand there, and then the door itself is just so elegant. I thought, and I wanted to take a photo of that. And kind of the main piece in my little my photos of doors here is from Japan, and it's from a castle, one of the most beautiful castles in Japan, I think. And you can see that this door is very small, short, and it's intentionally so, so that the idea is everyone who goes through this door enters at kind of the same status. Um, so you can kind of have a sense of when someone enters a room, if they're ducking, under a door, wow, this person's really tall. There's kind of some presence that comes with it. Or if, people can enter doors in a certain way. Some people have that essence, that aura of them. But when everyone absolutely has to stoop or bow to enter in through this door, then it puts everyone on the same level. And I thought that was so interesting that they intentionally made the door in that way. And it is, you'll see this in other old buildings throughout Japan. And then my last two photos are from Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and it's a large temple complex, and there are numerous doors that don't necessarily lead anywhere, or don't necessarily, that I'm aware of, and I'm sure that I'm saying this very inaccurately, have some intention to them, but there must be something very, very interesting to why they're there. And I'm sure that speaking with someone much more educated about this area than I am would explain that. But I just thought so neat to have these different doors, and exactly like Jen was saying, that the light comes through them in different ways and shines on the things within this isn't even a room. This is just a few doors in open space, but the light comes in it through in a different way, and makes it feel so much neater. And of course, the doorway itself frames what you're looking at outside of the door, in this case. And then the last door is from a different area in Angkor Wat, and I was so impressed by the size of this door, this giant door that looks like it's made out of one, I don't know, it's maybe necessarily one big piece of stone or whatnot, but having this, it makes you think, what's on the other side? What could it be? This very ornate door that is very big, that looks like, I'm not even sure if it can be opened. And what's on the other side? And the whole place is just a little mysterious to begin with. In a good way, it has that feel to it that you're just really in a unique place that has so many secrets there, and everything is intentional in the way it was done for some purpose. And then you see this, and you're left with your imagination to think of what all is happening. And as I'm talking, you might notice there's a bunch of circles around here. Those are, sorry to say, those are actual bullet holes from different conflicts in the area, which kind of is a testament to how long Angkor Wat has been around, but also to a testament of what people are capable of doing when they're motivated for one purpose or another. But having seen these different doors throughout my different travels, I started to, like Jen said at the very beginning of the episode, to notice the different doors that you see around you, and then I always hoped that I could snap a little picture of them too, just for my own little idiosyncrasies, I guess.
Barney, I love the doors that you selected. Each one was so unique from the others, and also they're doors that I don't think we would typically see. The styles and the way that they were presented, we wouldn't often come across them here in Ohio. So it's fascinating, and I'm glad that you picked a large door too, a great door. The size, there's something about the size of a door, like as you approach it, that it affects our posture. And Katie and I went with Hannah this past Monday to the Akron Zoo. I don't have a picture of it to share right now, but the front doors to the Akron Zoo are huge, and they've designed them very well, so they're not too heavy to open. But as you're walking into the front door, you really notice that sense. And so it's just maybe a taste of what you were experiencing in front of that great door. But you're right; it was sad to see the bullet holes that sometimes we as humans we're not good stewards of the beautiful things around us, and can leave them damaged. And yes. Um, well, I'm wondering if now would be an okay time to spend a little time reflecting on the art installation that you created with the door, if that's okay, Jen.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so I need to shift to that real quick here. And as I'm doing that, um, I just kind of wondered if you would say a little bit, Jen, about like how you came up with the idea or what drew you to want to do the theme of a door when you were invited to create this art installation for the annual conference assembly meeting of the Ohio Conference of the Mennonite Church.
Yeah, sure. So, um, honestly, doing art with a door had been something that had been on my back burner of ideas for a long time. I a number of years ago I did a series of illustrations about interiors and um I yeah, so I've been thinking about a lot about like how I could work doors, like an actual door, into a series like that. So art and door were like already very close together. And when I received the email asking about my availability to create some art for this event, um, that was just it was the first thing that came to my mind. um, yeah, I I thought it was appropriate for the conversation that was happening at that event, and it also kind of scratched that itch that I'd had about making art with a door. So, yeah, I I ended up sourcing the door. I went down to the Habitat Restore and poked around a little bit, and I found this beautiful door. If I had to say, I would say it's from like maybe the 40s, just because it kind of looks similar to other doors that I've seen in houses of that era. Um, and it's solid. It's one of those kind of like heavy, solid doors, with no doorknob. One side had been painted and one side is just wood colored, stained. Um, and that's kind of where I started. And then should I say some about the process of?
Yes, and would it be helpful? Is it okay if I bring up a picture
Sure.
of the door? This is actually a set of three photos that were taken in the basement of our church when you were in the process of working on the door. And
Yeah.
so, as we have those up, maybe those who are watching on YouTube can have a sense of what you're referring to. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Um, yeah, first I just have to say I was so thankful to have the large space in the basement of the church to do this project. It would have not been possible at all to complete in our own house. So there's that. Um, so the first thing I did with the door is, and this was actually kind of more challenging than I anticipated. I had this really loosely woven piece of fabric. I don't entirely know what kind of fabric it was because it wasn't labeled or anything. I thrifted it, and um, so in one big piece, I glued that down to the surface of the door. It was tricky because you can see that there's some dimension to the door, like around the window and those panels at the bottom. And so, like, getting that piece to lay flat or flat-ish was a little bit of a problem-solving puzzle, but we got there. Um, and then the next layer on the door, you kind of see through the window area these little rectangles. So that's another um chunk of fabric that I thrifted. This one had like a I can't think of the word. It had like a natural texture to it, which I thought was kind of cool. And so I just cut up uh maybe like, oh, sorry, I can't remember. I was going to say how many yards of this fabric I cut into these tiny pieces. It was several. I can't remember exactly how many. Um, and yeah, I glued those on, had some help from one of the young girls at in our congregation and some help from our daughter also. Um, so I thought it was really cool that they could be part of the process too. Um, yeah, so we've got the two layers of fabric, and then this one part of the door, like, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place a little bit. My vision for this project kind of evolved from like an initial sketch to a final product, but the one element that stayed like from the initial sketch to the final product is this sparkly part on the side. Um,
That's my favorite part, by the way. I love that you did that. I think it's fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, I was so excited about this. I you know, when you're a grown adult, you don't often have the need to purchase a pound of of sequins. But here we are purchasing a pound of sequins. So um that is actually connected with this kind of industrial strength double-sided tape. Uh and then each little sequin is just like pressed in there. There's three different sizes. I thought it was cool how they fit together. And the whole idea of that was very important to me, because it in the right lighting, I think that would be like extremely like luminous. Like it would just the light would reflect very, very amazingly because those things have like the little plastic gems have a reflective back to them. So it would be like it would glow a little bit. Which is an effect that is a little bit lost in the fluorescent lights of this picture, but that's okay. um, yeah, anyway, that effect is to underline like the potential here. Like this is a door. Um, there's so much potential of what it could be doing. Um, so how's it going to be used? Um, as I was putting this project together, it took forever, right? Like a lot of art does. And so I had a lot of time to think through like the various layers of meaning here. Um, and one thing that came to me was the fact that there's no doorknob on this door. And I wanted to leave it that way. I decided ultimately to leave it that way. Um, and it makes me think about like, okay, if this door is going to do what doors do, then somebody's going to have to exert some power here. Like, is that going to be from the outside of the door or from the inside of the door? Are you going to push it or are you going to find a way to pull it? Um, yeah, it just makes a person think. um, yeah, should I talk about the other elements?
Yes, I think if you would be willing to talk about maybe the kind of maybe some of the symbolic significance of the branches, and um, I know when you sent the text to me, there was a lot of layers of meaning on either side of the door, the branches, even the sparkling aspect of the edge of the door. If you would like to touch on any of those, I think it's very interesting. I think our audience would enjoy it too.
Okay. Sure. So, though the trees look a little bit different in the final product than they did in the initial sketch, the idea of trees was always going to be part of this. What I ended up doing was sourcing some branches from wherever I could find them. I ended up finding both of these actually had fallen from a tree at the kids' school. And and so here's me trying to shove these into my kind of smallish car and take them home. And I did the same process as I did with the door. So you had the first layer of like finely, or not finely, loosely woven fabric, and then the second layer with the little rectangles. Um, yeah, so that's why they look white. And the placement of them, it you can't really see in these pictures, but in the final, there's a tree that's in front of the door and there's a tree that's behind the door. And it's like there's life on both sides of the door. Yeah. And it's subtle, but the tree on the left here is actually behind the door, and the tree on the right is before the door. They're both trees. Um, there's life on both sides. There's something worthy on both sides, right? And that was really important. Um, the final component, I guess, is that mound thing on the bottom of the door. I was really excited about how this came together. Um, one of the things I was a little bit worried about at the start of this project was getting overwhelmed by the potential, getting overwhelmed with like the number of directions that you could take it. Um, and I feel like it was real provision that the pieces just kind of like, came together the way that they did. And the mound was just like a really, really strong experience of that, because I sat down with a box cutter and a pile of cardboard and just started cutting. And I had kind of a vague idea of what I wanted this thing to look like, and it worked. So I assembled this cardboard and taped it together with duct tape, and um, then I took this not the same. This was different fabric pieces, but a similar color, and kind of built it up. There's plaster in there, so I was trying to make it into something that looked like the bottom of, when big trees are coming out of the ground, you have that bit of earth that kind of comes up
Mm,
around them. It's
yes.
supposed to be like that, like if this door was grown out of the ground, perhaps this is how like the
Mhm.
earth would look around it. So that's how I did it.
That's so interesting. I remember when you were putting it together, I came in to check on your progress, and you were explaining some of the parts of the door and the meaning. And the what you just mentioned really struck me at the time, because I think one of the ways you explained it to me was that the branches are kind of a reflection of the natural creation of God, like
Mhm.
something that is just produced and out there without any human involvement.
Mhm.
But the door is made of the same material, like wood, that naturally is something that we didn't create, but we as humans shaped it and crafted it. And so simultaneously you have expressions of like the natural things that God has done and intertwined, or right there beside it as something that humans have done. But there's this kind of connection between both of them in the way you presented it. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, like, and you can't separate those. Like, the wood came from a tree.
Right. Right. Yes. And here, for those who are watching on YouTube, is the door as it's presented at the annual conference assembly after you were finished. And it was on the stage there throughout the whole weekend. And I enjoyed looking at it um, as we were having conversations. And you'd mentioned earlier how you felt like the door was a meaningful backdrop as we're having conversations as a conference about like the type of culture we want to have and how we work through difference, and this whole idea of the potential of the door. And then you had also mentioned, I think too, that the edge of the door with the reflective element has kind of this sense of the um, I don't know how quite to phrase it, but that there is capacity for something beautiful to happen, or
Mhm.
something maybe unexpected, or the light that could fluoresce or shine, off of that is a something that captures our imagination. And so looking for moments like that in the conversation was meaningful. And I remember when you were before we got to ACA and saw the door there in its final form, I asked you, do you think maybe that we could, after ACA, bring the door to Worcester Mennonite and then do a series on doors in the Bible? And you seem like open in that to the idea, like, sure, like, why not? And so I just want to share a picture of what it looks like here now at Worcester Mennonite Church, where it is currently, as we're still going through this series on doors. And so there it is displayed for us now. Um,
Yeah, I think I need to get in there and do some reinforcements on some of those limbs.
oh, okay. Okay.
They, they're a little worse for wear after taking a couple trips in the car and a tumble down the stairs. So yeah, but it's okay. This is fixable.
Barney, as you were just hearing Jen share about her experience making the door, and as you've seen pictures of it in, you know, a few different places, what are thoughts that come to your mind about this art project?
Yeah, I loved hearing the process of the creation of this art project, and it's something that always fascinates me too, because I think that when you're doing something like drawing or writing a poem or writing a story or a play or something, especially when you're intentionally adding symbolism to what you do, there, from my own experience, there are a few times where you feel like maybe a kind of catharsis, where you feel a kind of um, sense that, wow, this is just perfect. This couldn't have come together better. This is better than I imagined. This feels so great to be able to use this kind of symbolism the way that I'm doing it here. And I'm curious, when you were creating it, I know you mentioned a few different things through the process. Were there some of those instances that you had, and what part of the door was it that you just really felt kind of like awe inspired by, or like really kind of emotionally connected to when you were making it?
Yeah. Um, so are you asking about like the layers of intentional symbolism?
So I'm just asking,
Sorry.
like as you were making it, did you have this kind of like real experience, like, wow, this is exactly what I wanted. This is coming together. I didn't think this could come together so nicely.
Hmm.
Either as you were making it, or thinking like the symbolism that you hoped to project, and then the way that this came together exactly matches with what your vision was, and like that kind of real satisfying feeling kind of
Yeah.
coming out of creating something at that time. And I was wondering if there were any parts of the process or of the finished product that you really felt that kind of strong connection with.
Yeah. Um, Thanks, Barney. It's a good question. So, um, yeah, the process of putting on the gems on the side and the top of the door edge was really meaningful. First, it took forever. Um, and I'm like hunched over, like in a kind of weird posture, just because of what is necessary. Um, and just thinking it's just a very slow process, and thinking where every single one will go. And some of them end up sticking not exactly where I want them to be, but like you just have to work with it because like it's stuck now. And just that like that part of the door was so important. Like that, I think, I don't know, maybe it's the most important part of the door. Like of all the things a door can do, like um I felt like these sparkles were like it's just kind of magical or holy or something. Like the way that a door can welcome people in is just like it's for me that is so powerful. Yeah, I was worried a little bit about creating art that felt didactic. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted it to be able to speak to people like where they are, and also like, it's also meaningful for me. Like I there there is specific meaning in it for me. So, yeah. I hope that answered your question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And kind of connected with exactly what you said at the end. Did you ever, when you were making it, did you ever have any kind of, on the exact opposite, any kind of sense of doubt, where thinking, to me, this symbolizes this, but if someone else sees it, they might think this, and they might actually think kind of almost the opposite of what I'm hoping to intend. Did you ever
Yeah,
have, yeah.
I did. I was a little worried about that. But then, um, you know, before I was a teacher for a really long time. I taught English, um and I've enjoyed art for a lot of my life. And I feel like, and I've published a couple of books, and I feel like you just have to have peace with, like, sometimes people are going to find things that you didn't intend for them to find. Um, and that's just like, that is reality. And um, yeah, yeah. I was a little worried. Like, this is a door. Um, one thing that doors do is close and lock and leave people out. And that's not what I was hoping that people would take from this particular door at this particular event. Um, so yeah, yes, I was worried about that.
It's interesting how there is a certain element of letting go when you're putting your art out there. um, on the one hand, you didn't want to be didactic and like too, pardon me, heavy-handed about how people were to interpret your art, but on the other hand, you were realizing too that people, it's so subjective that they could, take it in ways that you hadn't thought, but you had invested a lot of meaning in it personally, and so probably you're hoping that it would inspire others like it inspired you. And I've been so excited to hear people's feedback as we've been doing this series at Worcester Mennonite to the door. A number of people have really appreciated it being there and specifically asked me multiple times to read your explanation of the door. They said they think that's really important, which makes me think that's an affirmation of the symbolism and the intent that you create the door with. Because the first week I read it, I had like three people say, "Oh, I'm so glad you read that during the message because that really made the door more accessible to me." And then the next week, I didn't read it directly, but I made reference to it. And then Julie, during a period after the sermon, talked a little bit about the explanation that had been read the week before and said, for those who weren't here, this is some more of the symbolism. And then I've had other people ask me, you should keep mentioning the meaning each time you do a new message in this series so that people understand the richness. So all that to say, I think that that you weren't too didactic and that the summary that you gave was helpful to people and that people were hungry. It was kind of like seeing the door gave them some questions in their mind, like, what does this mean? What does that mean? And hearing your own sense of why you chose what you did was meaningful to them. So just want to put
Yeah,
that out there. Yeah.
that's so cool. Thanks, Jacob. That's really nice to hear. It's really affirming of like the whole process.
Good,
Thank you.
good. Absolutely. Well, one of the things that we've talked about, I know we haven't talked about it extensively, but there is the potential after we're done with this series at Worcester Mennonite that if you're feeling good about it, Jen, that we could offer to loan the door out to other Mennonite churches in the area. That's not a new concept. There have been other times where churches have shared resources and art like that for a series. So the door may live on
Yeah.
in some way, in other, environments, when it's used.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's amazing. Like, I I would be completely understanding if it did spend a lot of time just like being stored somewhere. But for it to take the show on the road, like
Yes.
that's really
Yes.
cool. Um, yeah, that's just really cool. I'm really gonna have to reinforce those trees so they
Yeah.
can withstand
Yeah.
travel.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, are there any other questions that either of you have or thoughts that you'd like to share before Barney closes us?
Um, well, I would just want to say thanks. Thank you for this opportunity. It's been really fun chatting with you guys and nice to be here. This is my first podcast ever, so thank you.
It's our pleasure. We're so glad that you could join us and we're willing to share and jump in this conversation. It's been really rich. So we really appreciate it. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so we would like to thank all of you who have watched along or listened along on today's episode. We hope that thinking about the symbolism that Jen explained to us about her art installment has kind of inspired you and maybe given you a new outlook on the work itself. Have you seen it, especially hearing about the creation of it, and more generally, as the first half of our episode was about just the doors we have with us in our lives and that we see around us, and what does a door do? What does a door mean? Much more than just function. And we hope, if you are listening on podcasts, we hope that maybe you'll take a moment, especially with this episode, and check out the YouTube version so you can see the real richness of the images that were shared today. And we, as always, are very thankful for you listening along with us today on the Two World Podcast. I am Barney with Jacob and today's guest, Jen. And we are looking forward to seeing you guys and connecting with you again in the next episode. So thank you all very much, and goodbye.